Before we get into the meat of things, let's talk a little about Mechagodzilla and his character throughout the years. Mechagodzilla made his first appearance in 1974's aptly titled Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, the second to last of the Showa-era Godzilla films. Many people regarded the movie as a flop that put one of the final nails in the coffin of the original Godzilla series. Considering it features a nonsensical plot revolving around a prophecy to revive a previously unheard of kaiju that ultimately just gets in Godzilla's way, a needlessly long awakening song, as well as space apes, I can see their point. Personally, I consider the original Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla to be one of the must-sees of the entire series. The fight between them is iconic, and by golly, was it the bloodiest of the films. Like, really bloody. You got a jaw being ripped open, fountains of gore in Tokyo Bay, and Godzilla spraying blood from his neck like it's a fucking Tarantino movie. With this much ferocity in its predecessor, I wish we got a bit more of that out of this Mechagodzilla. No doubt, he's still violent as all hell, but where's the blood? You know, there was a time that Japanese kids shows held the mentality of the more blood, the better. Because kids love blood, and my inner child is ravenous. Probably because I keep him in a crawl space. There are also some very weird and interesting links I found between our three characters, Godzilla, Kong, and Mechagodzilla. Try to follow me on this. So, the idea of Godzilla having a robot adversary was initially inspired by the 1967 film King Kong Escapes, which featured Kong going toe-to-toe with the evil Mechanicon. So, not only does Mechagodzilla owe his origins to King Kong, but during the release of Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla and the subsequent film Terror of Mechagodzilla, foreign markets decided to refer to Mechagodzilla as King Kong in promotional material, in some cases to cash in on the recent success of the 1976 King Kong film, and in other cases because people don't give Godzilla movies no respect. That, or they got confused by the sheer amount of space apes, which was also Toho's attempt to cash in on the success of the Planet of the Apes films. So basically, Mechanicon was ripped off by Mechagodzilla, who was constructed by rip-offs of Planet of the Apes, and sold under a different name to further mooch off King Kong. Not to mention that Godzilla powers himself up via lightning, just like Kong does in their first bout, which only happened because, and get this, the original King Kong vs. Godzilla was supposed to be King Kong vs. Frankenstein. But after American studios didn't buy the project, it was sold to Toho, where they instead inserted Godzilla, swapped Kong to the Frankenstein role, and hence why he retains the ability to be powered up by electricity. It doesn't even stop there. When Terror of Mechagodzilla was released, the German market referred to the new kaiju, Titanosaurus, as Konga, which led them to dub the film Konga Godzilla King Kong, The Devil's Brood. Devil's Brood, I'm assuming being a joke about how incestuous this intellectual property is. Glad they didn't call it the Devil's Triangle. Me too! But hey, if you want a real joke, check out the Italian poster for the movie Terror of Mechagodzilla. Can you believe this was the least attended film of the original series? Which of course led to that long 9-year hiatus, where we had to say goodbye to our good Wait, what's wrong with his face? Why does Godzilla look completely different here than the rest of the movie? Like he got called back in for reshoots after getting Botox or something? Well, it turns out that he looks different because this suit is actually the fake Godzilla costume they had Mechagodzilla wearing in the first film. Remember that? Remember when Mechagodzilla wore a Godzilla skin suit?
Oh, what are you, about a size 14?
Remember when everyone thought that they were gonna do that again in this movie to explain why
Godzilla's out there and he's hurting people and we don't know why?
You ask me, if they're gonna bring back anything, it should be space apes! Or their cigar-smoking leader. Oh, what a badass he was.
Mechagodzilla. Beat Godzilla to death.
Let's be honest. Who wouldn't be donning a stogie-filled grin if they had this absolute demon under their command? I mean, I know I've been talking a little shit, but Mechagodzilla is one of the most badass characters of the series. What makes him so awesome? He's a walking arsenal. Every inch of his body has some kind of ridiculous weapon hidden away. He's like the Inspector Gadget of giant monsters. His first rendition equipped him with chest cannons, nuclear finger missiles, and a fucking beer gut. Alright, if you're gonna make a doppelganger of Godzilla, fine, but do you really have to mock his weight? Like, we all know he's got them thunder thighs, no need to rub it in his face. 20 years after the original, we got Mechagodzilla 2. A weapon constructed by mankind using the remnants of Mecha King Ghidorah, Mechagodzilla 2 was built as an anti-Godzilla weapon, and manned by a team of pilots, which makes a shit ton more sense than having your controls in fragile hardware or a cyborg woman. It was the 70s. Anyway, Mechagodzilla 2, despite looking more clean and sleek than his predecessor, still held its own against both Godzilla and Rodan, and even succeeded in paralyzing Godzilla by using his Go-Go Gadget Kaiju laser to rupture Godzilla's second brain. Yeah, that's right. Godzilla has a second brain, or had a second brain. I don't know. It's in his ass. It's in his ass, and they blew it up, it grew back, and no one's ever talked about it since. Also, Godzilla and Rodan somehow birthed a kids' show dinosaur that bonded with a woman who dates men on mechanical pterodactyls? I don't know.
Oh my god!
Now we come to the third generation. With the new millennium came a new Mechagodzilla, aka Kiyu. Built on the skeletal remains of the original Godzilla and packing one of the sharpest designs and weaponry, Kiyu has to be my favorite Mechagodzilla. Facing off twice against Godzilla in the early 2000s, not only do we get some pretty awesome battles, some of the last suitmation in the series actually, but we also get some character building, as Kiyu has a soul that understands its connection with Godzilla and, of its own volition, sacrifices itself to return Godzilla to rest on the ocean floor. Since then, the most we've seen of Mechagodzilla is a brief cameo in Singular Point's credits and Mechagodzilla's city in the anime trilogy, obviously leaving much to be desired. Still, with almost 50 years of legacy, there have been enough variations and ideas used with Mechagodzilla's character that pretty much any design Adam Wingard went with would have been acceptable. He chose Dinobot. A choice I still question to this day, but one of many, let's be real. What's interesting to me is the way Mechagodzilla's fighting style has changed over the years, where he began as a ranged attacker with limited melee abilities. Mechagodzilla has slowly morphed over time into a close-quarters combatant. Now we have this version that jumps right into the fray to rip your fucking lungs out. It almost seems to relish in getting its hands dirty. And boy does it hate Godzilla. Why's that? Because Mechagodzilla's operating system contains the salvaged brain of King Ghidorah. Why does it contain the brain of King Ghidorah? No fucking idea. Sure, they made some comment earlier about Ghidorah's advanced telepathic abilities making his brain equivalent to a supercomputer. But since supercomputers exist, and are probably much more viable than alien dragon gray matter, I don't see why this would be the best option. Anyway, the mecha has been fully charged, thanks to that little spider bot downloading gasoline at the center of the planet, and transferring that data remotely through thousands of miles of solid Earth. Don't question it, you'll fry your brain. Mechagodzilla begins to activate, much to the chagrin of a teary-eyed Maddie. Well, why's she crying? Don't you have faith in your savior? I'd figure by this point she'd have a Raymond Burr-type confidence in him.
General, I hope you succeed. But no matter what happens, Godzilla will live.
So upon activation, Mechagodzilla does what we knew he would do and kills his human masters. Now, I heard someone mention that in the novelization, Ren Serizawa may have actually survived this kaiju electric chair and escaped with the remnants of Ghidorah's consciousness. To that I say, no. This man is clearly dead, and I will not condone the idea that a kaiju is going to inhabit a human body, ride the bus, take a shit and wipe, go on awkward dates. It's Ghidorah in the big city! No, save that for the fanfictions that no one reads. Mechagodzilla swipes at the control room, killing Simmons and apparently every other Apex employee, being that we never see one again for the rest of the movie. It's really, really bizarre. They're all just gone. No one trying to damage control the situation, no fire suppression teams, no medical staff, just gone. Leaving Maddie and the boys to watch Mechagodzilla squeeze out of the mountain base in Ace Ventura-like fashion. I find it interesting that when we last left Godzilla, it was still nighttime, but now that Mechagodzilla's emerged, it's daytime again. Like what was he doing during the interim? Surely the creature with the pinpoint accuracy to hit the direct center of the Earth could find a hidden apex base in the only mountain around. Probably could snipe it from the South Pole, you fucking crackshot. Maybe he was just taking a breather. Sort of like how Kong did after he knocked Godzilla down with the axe. Thank you, King Venomzilla, for pointing out this moment because it drives me nuts now. Where is Kong going right here? Like, he knocks Godzilla on his ass and then he backs away. Like, you just go for the finish. Alright. Mechagodzilla has finally appeared. He opens up a barrage of heat beam on the still crowded city streets. Honestly, if you're still out in a Sunday stroll by this point, you fucking had it coming. Still, it's a brutal demonstration of Mechagodzilla's power. Dun dun dun. No, really, he says that. Oh my god. The fight begins with both adversaries charging at each other because it's what you do, I guess. Now, when it comes to motivations, Ghidorah's brain in Mechagodzilla is supposedly seeking revenge, hence its wrathful nature. However, Godzilla, whether he's aware of Ghidorah's presence specifically or not, is trying to destroy the threat of Mechagodzilla. Remember the whole balance thing? He doesn't like people fucking his shit up. He's like a kaiju working man. So, what would be his usual means of removing a pest? Cleansing fire! It's fair to say that one of Godzilla's usual openers is to douse his opponent in atomic flames. You'd think that'd be a no-brainer. I mean, he did the same thing with Kong. It was only about 10 seconds into the fight before we saw Godzilla spark up a beam. It's his primary means of keeping an adversary at bay. Now, this would be a prime moment to do exactly that, but for some reason, Godzilla tries to go hand to hand, even though he hasn't even recovered from his last fight. I thought it would have been interesting to see Mechagodzilla trying to impede Godzilla's beam at first, firing rockets and closing the gap as often as possible to stagger his ranged weapon, only to eventually realize that his own beam is more powerful than Godzilla's. It would have been more intimidating if Mechagodzilla was not only defeating Godzilla, but learning its own lethality as it tears through Godzilla's tried and true tactics. Meanwhile, on the Kong side of things, Gia goes to talk with Kong.
Ask it how much it can bench! Ask it how much it can bench!
Nah, but he dying. I guess. He suddenly lost the will to live. That, or he's suffering from heinous internal injuries. Either way, detonating something on his chest will definitely cure him. Give him the old Cleveland steamer treatment. And it works. Iceman saves the day by parking the ship on top of Kong and overloading the engine like a defibrillator, saving Kong from death by dislocated shoulder. The only shame is that during Iceman's dramatic running away from the ship, we don't see how he gets off Kong. Like what, did he slide down his Rapunzel-like armpit hairs? I mean, Godzilla had some pretty bad mites, so imagine what's growing in Kong's pelt. But Kong is revived, recovers in an instant, and is convinced to help Godzilla after a 20-second conversation. That all checks out. By the way, how does the girl know Mechagodzilla is the bad guy? The only thing that indicates his evil nature is a couple of red lights and the fact he torched a few buildings during his introduction. But Team Kong didn't arrive until after that point, so they never saw all that. Considering she's seen the destruction Godzilla caused earlier, and the fact this new monster is clearly man-made, it's just as likely that this machine is fighting for mankind. The enemy of my enemy is my friend? I don't know. Just seems like you should verify this type of information before you sick your monkey on a potential ally. Anyway, Kong's full of piss and vinegar. However, before he can rejoin the fray, he pops his shoulder back into place against a building. Now, I like this moment. I think it's badass, and I think it works for the character, even though I know a lot of people won't agree. I remember hearing that Kong was written in a John McClane-like capacity, jumping out of explosions and shrugging off horrible wounds. However, after everything else we've been through, this is a pretty small potatoes moment. So whilst all this is going down, Team Godzilla basically has nothing to do. Bernie and Josh bicker over guessing passwords, while Maddie pretty much just stands there. Our go-get-em gal literally has nothing to do in this situation except for calling her dad a cis white male for help. How progressive movie. By the way, didn't you think this phone call to Mark would pay off in some way, shape, or form? Sure, Maddie isn't able to tell Mark much of anything before the call drops, but he does have this momentary look of realization on his face, hinting at some type of future reveal, but it never pans out. I was predicting he and a Monarch Special Forces team would swoop in at last second to save our powerless heroes, stopping the clock at exactly 007, some bullshit.
What kept you?
But no, the movie has something far more, well, let's just say they choose to go a different route with the, alright, let's just say it. Josh pouring Bernie's flask into the control system to stop Mechagodzilla and save the day stinks.
He stinks, and I don't like him.
Don't get me wrong. The magnetic pipe being used to destroy the controls in the original Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla was also a pretty weak story element and felt pretty shoehorned. But at least it makes sense somewhat logically in that we know magnets disrupt electrical equipment. But here, we're talking about a state-of-the-art, technological masterpiece. Just think about that. This means that the whole operation could have been crippled at any moment by a single coffee spill. Oh, careful, Neil. Careful, those Mechagodzilla controls are very sensitive. Oh, fuck! Things aren't looking good for Godzilla. Completely overwhelmed by his opponent, and most likely exhausted from his first battle, Godzilla is used as a ragdoll to remodel downtown Hong Kong. Honestly, it hurts my soul to see our boy getting goon-handed so easily. It even comes down to Mechagodzilla finishing him off with his own signature kiss of death. Oh, God. Gratefully, Kong intervenes and turns the tide. This is why I was suggesting Godzilla lean on his ranged abilities, so that when Mechagodzilla's close quarters strength proves too much, Kong, a proven grappler, can stem the imbalance. However, even Kong's rage is insufficient against all of Mechagodzilla's hidden weapons, like his drill tail. Now that's a pretty awesome ability that I wish got more screen time. Had it not been for human intervention, again, Kong's brains would have been fucking scrambled. However, with his remote control system malfunctioning, I guess Mechagodzilla's unable to continue drilling, and just becomes confused. My question is, why wouldn't he just shut down? Dead, like a pigeon, just... Honestly, it's utterly confusing trying to understand how a kaiju brain and remote control system are both used to pilot Mechagodzilla. I mean, if this control room is so integral to his operating system, why would he even risk taking a swipe at it to begin with, and cutting some important wire or DNA tube or whatever? And if this control system is such an Achilles heel to his functionality, why wouldn't Apex make it waterproof? I guess the budget ran out there right at the end, they could either have the watertight seal on the machinery, or they could have the dun-dun-dun noise, and, management was looking one way. Wait, there was one Ghidorah head, right? I mean, that's what they tell us at the end of King of the Monsters. So, how can there be a skull here and a brain inside Mechagodzilla? And why would hooking up wires to bone be able to telepathically link a brain implanted in... Wait a minute! You're telling me that all you need is a few DNA tubes on a skull alone and you could access its consciousness? What kind of modern day phrenology are you spouting? Like I could just whip out any skull and say, this is old Ben. Through the study of phrenology, I can easily access the part of his brain most associated with subservience. Talking kaiju skull dimples. Fuck that. Dude, they don't even explain how they got the head. Remember Tywin? Whatever happened to that scarf-wearing curmudgeon? Did Simmons send him to the old LeQuint Dickey Mining Company? Or did he make him a comfort girl?
What's a comfort? Oh.
Nevertheless, Mechagodzilla begins to short-circuit, momentarily deactivating the drill, giving Kong enough time to charge his axe off Godzilla's provided beam. He then disassembles Mechagodzilla with the grace of a junkyard dog. Bear in mind, this is the same charged axe that barely wounded Godzilla at max power that is now completely devastating Mechagodzilla's armor with ease. Limbs removed, Kong pounces and yanks Ghidorah's brain out of Mechagodzilla, ending the new Apex's reign in a flash. Legends never die. GG, MG. With the fight over, Iceman comes to and Mark searches the streets, somehow finding Maddie in a matter of minutes, even though he had no idea she was even there, and despite our last seeing her in a half-torn mountain laboratory. In case you couldn't tell, the movie's trying to wrap up quick. Gotta keep it under 2 hours. So our characters all meet up, and Maddie introduces Mark to Bernie, the man she's been talking to online. That's when Chris Hansen steps out and asks Bernie to take a seat. Did this girl tell you how old she was when you began talking to her online? She did, Bernie. You see, I have the chat logs right here. Coming up, we track a giant ape who's attempting to keep a little girl captive on his remote island. Despite a history of abusing women, we're shocked to see some of the things he signs to our underage decoy are of a sexually explicit nature. All this and more on To Catch an Apex Predator. Fuck it, let's end this. All the cast's hand-holding is interrupted by Godzilla coming to. Really, dude should be limping around like he's coming off a 2-week bender, but somehow he's unfazed. With the fight over and peace reached, Kong drops his axe, signifying his lack of intention to see Godzilla as an enemy. Godzilla accepts this and returns to the sea. Then we cut to a scene which was initially supposed to be an after-credits scene, where Monarch is setting up camp in the Hollow Earth, and Kong now holds dominion. He's finally home, and can live happily ever after. The end. I have to wonder though, if they'd left this in as an after-credits scene, would the movie have just ended when Godzilla re-entered the ocean? That would have been a little lackluster. I mean, considering this movie could potentially be the wrap-up for the Monsterverse for the foreseeable future, you'd think they'd give us some kind of state-of-the-world montage, where we see Apex being dissolved and Bernie being vindicated, maybe show Monarch lending aid to the refugees in Hong Kong and destroying Ghidorah's remains for good. We could show Mark out photographing wolves again with Maddie by his side, maybe using Josh as bait, I don't know. It just feels like we could have had some sense of finality to the film's ending besides seeing the credits. I'm not saying give the movie 6 endings like Return of the King, but we shouldn't forget the importance of the cooldown after the climax. Remember how Shin Gojira took the time to show refugees rejoicing and have a little epilogue conversation, possibly teasing at future films? Here, things just end. I gotta tell you, I'm never gonna forgive Adam Wingard's gotta keep it under 2 hours mentality. Either write a story that fits the runtime, or tell the complete story. Having just discussed the end battle, it's easy to forget what a long and arduous journey it's been getting here. All the plot points that are dropped in or taper off, all the characters with no real payoff, all the stumbling as the story gunned for the finish line. It could just be that I've dedicated countless hours to creating this review, but I honestly can't imagine myself sitting down and watching this film start to finish ever again, let alone the entire series. And I still have to finish my 2014 review. Fuck! I have to say, the most depressing part of this whole ordeal is that this series is going to define the next generation of Godzilla fans. These are the movies that kids will grow up with, and what they will consider to be the gold standard. Substandard is the new standard, and I think that's an issue that will decay the quality of writing at an exponential rate. Could you imagine taking a kid who loved these films and trying to show him the 1954 classic? He wouldn't get it. He'd fall asleep faster than my girl and complain there's too much talking. At a certain point, the people behind the scenes decided to steer away from the subtext and inherent symbolism behind Godzilla's character and reduced it to a Michael Bay Transformers CGI circle jerk. I wanted to feel something from this series, but the best they could do was shoot this in my eyes and not even have the decency to offer me a towel. You know why it took me so long to make this last part? It's because I wanted to end with something special. And really, there's nothing special about any of this. There's no overall goal accomplished, no themes to ponder, no moral or lesson to the story. The good guys team up to beat the bad guys. They go home. The movie ends. That's about all I could say. I don't walk away from this trilogy with any greater understanding or appreciation for Godzilla. How crazy is it to realize that the anime series left a more lasting impression of Godzilla's character and purpose than this entire series? Honestly, it makes me feel embarrassed for liking Godzilla and putting this much effort into discussing him. Congratulations, Legendary. Your series has taught me to hate what I once loved. And it's not even that the previous films were these unattainable instances of cinematic perfection. They're heavily flawed as well. The difference is that they were fun. I love bad dubbing, bad effects, seeing the strings. It's charming. In trying to apply the word fun to this series, I'm drawing a blank. The most I could say is that this series did indeed happen. These movies exist. Actors and crew members were paid. The name Godzilla was tossed around enough the last 7 years to keep the franchise's head above obscurity for just a little longer. Hell, maybe that's enough. If substandard is the new standard, maybe passable is the new successful. I mean, this movie crushed during the pandemic, which goes to show that people will support this series. After being locked in their homes for a year and exhausting all their entertainment options, who could say? I'm probably, well, definitely being too harsh. I'm probably just an old school Godzilla elitist who can't bear to see the thing I love change with the times. Maybe I'm wrong. It's completely possible that some 12-year-old will look back on these movies with the same affinity that I had when I was 12, watching Godzilla 1985 and Destroy All Monsters. It may even be possible that somebody out there will draw enough inspiration from this series to create the next great kaiju character that'll embody the horrors of our times. Maybe. Or maybe this whole thing was a gigantic waste of time, and we're all treading water in this puddle of revisionist nostalgia we call modern cinema. Only time will tell. But for now, the Monsterverse, this strangely innocent and tragic franchise, has gone to Earth. Whether it returns or not, or is never again seen by human eyes, the things it has taught us remain. Oh, fuck, I forgot the Monarch director. Remember Lance Redding? We saw him for a second and a half. What the fuck was that? Well, what does he have to say about all this? How do you leave such an important character on the cutting room floor, yet leave in the fucking shop owner scene? Look into my eyes. Go fuck yourself. Goddamn Monsterverse.